The cold wind howled through the cracks of the dilapidated cottage as Nora Jenkins pulled her threadbare shawl tighter around her slender shoulders. At 23, her youth still shone through the hardship etched upon her face. Her golden hair, once lustrous and full, hung in limp strands down her back, yet even in her mourning and poverty, her beauty remained undimmed. The plague had taken her husband Thomas only 3 months prior, leaving her alone with their 5-year-old son, Samuel, and nowhere to call home. "Mother, I am hungry," Samuel whispered, his small hand tugging at her worn dress, the neckline frayed and hanging lower than propriety would normally allow, exposing her delicate collarbone. "I know, my love," Nora replied, gently stroking his dark curls. "The magistrate will see us soon. He sent word about your great-uncle Edgar." The magistrate's office was small and cluttered with scrolls and ledgers. The portly man barely looked up as Nora entered, Samuel clutching her skirts. "Mistress Jenkins," he said without preamble, "your husband's uncle has passed. Having no direct heirs, his property falls to you through your marriage." He pushed a parchment across the desk. "It is not much, a small farm at the edge of Willowbrook, abandoned these past 3 years. A farm? Nora could scarcely believe it. A home, land of their own. Perhaps God had not forsaken them after all. The magistrate's mouth twisted into something between a grimace and a smile. "Do not get your hopes too high, mistress. The old man was known to be eccentric. The property has fallen into disrepair." "Anything is better than nothing, sir," Nora said, straightening her back, the movement causing her threadbare bodice to strain slightly against her figure, a fact not lost on the magistrate, whose eyes lingered too long before he cleared his throat. "Very well. Here are the documents and the key. May God grant you better fortune than Edgar Jenkins found there." The journey to Willowbrook took Nora and Samuel 2 days of walking. When they crested the final hill and saw the farm below, Nora's heart sank. Derelict was too kind a word. The cottage roof had partially collapsed, the small field was overgrown with weeds, and the wooden fence lay broken in dozens of places. Only the large stone barn seemed relatively intact, though its doors hung askew. "Is this our home now, Mother?" Samuel asked, his eyes wide with childish wonder rather than disappointment. Nora swallowed hard. "Yes, my dear. It needs work, but it is ours." That first night, they huddled together in the one corner of the cottage where the roof remained solid. The next morning, Nora set to work clearing debris from the cottage floor while Samuel explored the overgrown yard. "Mother! Mother! Come see!" Samuel called, his voice excited. Nora rushed outside to find him standing by an old well she had not noticed before. "Water, Mother. Clean water." Indeed, the well seemed intact, and the water, when Nora drew up a bucketful, was clear and sweet. It was their first piece of good fortune. As the days passed, Nora worked from dawn until dusk repairing what she could of the cottage. The villagers kept their distance, watching with curious but unwelcoming eyes whenever she ventured into Willowbrook for supplies she could scarcely afford. "Do not mind them," said Clara, the baker's wife, the only person who had shown Nora any kindness. "They are superstitious about that place." Old Edgar was strange, always muttering about treasures and secrets. Treasures? On that worthless plot of land? Nora could not help but laugh. "So they say." But Edgar was touched in the head. Spent his last years digging holes all over his property, then filling them back in. Said he was protecting something valuable. Nora dismissed the story as village gossip. Yet that night, as she lay on her pallet listening to the wind, she wondered what had driven the old man to such strange behavior. A week after their arrival, Samuel found a dog. Or rather, the dog found them. A scrawny, mud-covered hound with intelligent eyes and a persistent bark. Samuel named him Rusty for his reddish-brown coat. "Can we keep him, Mother? Please," Samuel begged. Nora sighed. Another mouth to feed. But the joy in her son's eyes, the first real happiness since his father's death, made it impossible to refuse. "Very well," But he must earn his keep by catching rabbits. Rusty proved to be more than just a companion. The dog seemed to know the property, leading Samuel to a small stream behind the overgrown orchard and to patches of wild berries and mushrooms. With each small discovery, surviving another day became more possible. It was Rusty who first showed interest in the barn. Nora had avoided it, focusing on making the cottage habitable. But the dog would sit before the barn doors each morning, whining until Samuel inevitably followed. "Mother, Rusty wants to go in the barn," Samuel said on the 10th day. "The barn is dangerous, Samuel. The beams could collapse." But the dog's behavior continued, growing more insistent. Finally, curiosity overwhelmed caution, and Nora pushed open the heavy doors. Inside, dust motes danced in the shafts of light streaming through holes in the roof. Old farming implements hung on the walls, and empty stalls lined one side. Nothing of value, just as she had expected. Rusty darted to the back corner and began scratching at the dirt floor, whining. "He is probably after a mouse," Nora said, turning to leave. "No, Mother. Look." Samuel pointed to where Rusty dug. Something gleamed in the freshly exposed dirt. Kneeling down, Nora brushed away more soil to reveal a small metal ring. Tugging on it, she felt resistance, then give. A trapdoor, hidden beneath inches of packed earth, creaked open. Stone steps descended into darkness. "Stay here," Nora commanded, lighting a candle stub from the cottage. Heart pounding, she descended the stairs, holding the meager light before her. The cellar was small but solidly built, with walls of fitted stone. In the center stood a large wooden chest, its metal bands rusted but intact. Beside it lay a leather-bound journal, its pages yellow with age. With trembling hands, Nora lifted the book, then nearly dropped it as she heard voices above, unfamiliar, male voices. She quickly extinguished her candle and crept up the stairs. "Must be here somewhere." The old man would not have lied about that. The voice was cultured, imperious. "The new owner knows nothing, Lord Gilbert. Just a widow with a brat." This voice was rougher, servile. Nora froze. Hidden in the shadow of the trapdoor, she could see two pairs of boots, one fine leather, one rough-hewn, moving across the barn floor. Search the cottage next. And remember, discretion is essential. If the woman becomes problematic, handle it quietly. Nora's blood ran cold. Silently, she closed the trapdoor and descended back into the darkness, heart hammering. She felt her way to the chest and sat beside it, clutching Samuel's sleeping form to her breast when he was handed down to her by Rusty, who had somehow managed to drag the boy to the trapdoor without the men noticing. For hours, they remained hidden as footsteps and voices moved across the farm. When silence finally fell, Nora dared to light the candle again. Samuel slept against her shoulder while Rusty kept watch at the foot of the stairs. Opening the journal with one hand, Nora began to read by the flickering light. April 15th, 1542, the Duke entrusted me with the documents today. If they were ever to be discovered, his entire lineage would be questioned. I am to hide them where none would think to look, my worthless little farm. In return, he has given me gold enough to live comfortably for the remainder of my days. Nora turned page after page. Edgar Jenkins, it seemed, had been no simple farmer, but a clerk in the service of the powerful Duke of Northridge. The Duke had entrusted him with hiding evidence of a terrible secret. The Duke's grandfather had murdered his elder brother and stolen his title and lands. The proof lay in letters, a confession, and the true heir's hidden will. June 10th, 1552, the Duke is dead. His son knows nothing of our arrangement. I alone hold the truth. I have sealed the documents in the chest, along with the gold I never spent. Living simply kept suspicion at bay. Someday, my nephew Thomas or his children might discover this legacy. Until then, I shall keep my silence and maintain my facade of poverty and madness. Thomas, her husband, had never known. And now these men, presumably agents of the current Duke, were searching for the evidence that could destroy their master's claim to his title and wealth. With shaking hands, Nora opened the chest. Inside lay bags of gold coins, more money than she had ever seen, and a sealed packet of documents tied with faded ribbon. As dawn broke, Nora made her decision. Leaving Samuel asleep in the hidden cellar with Rusty standing guard, she made her way to the village, the most important documents concealed in her bodice. The magistrate's eyes widened as Nora Jenkins, looking remarkably composed despite her shabby dress, placed the documents before him. These prove that the current Duke of Northridge holds his title unlawfully, she said, her voice steady despite her fear. My great-uncle by marriage concealed them at the request of the old Duke. This is a serious accusation, Mistress Jenkins, the magistrate said, examining the papers with growing astonishment. If these are authentic, they are, came a new voice from the doorway. A tall man with sharp features and expensive clothes stepped into the office. And the lady is in grave danger because of them. Nora whirled, fear clutching at her throat. Who are you? Charles Grantham at your service. He bowed slightly. Special envoy to the King's Justice. I've been investigating the Northridge succession for 2 years, but lacked the evidence you now possess. The men at my farm, Lord Gilbert Northridge and his man, they will not trouble you further. My guards have detained them. Charles Grantham's eyes softened slightly. You have done a brave thing, Mistress Jenkins. The king will want to reward you for uncovering this deception. In the months that followed, Nora's life transformed. The king's investigators confirmed the document's authenticity. The false duke was stripped of his title, and the rightful heir, a distant cousin living in obscurity, was restored to his position. True to Charles Grantham's word, the king granted Nora a generous reward, enough to rebuild the farm into a prosperous estate. The hidden gold from Edgar's chest ensured that she and Samuel would never want for anything again. Charles Grantham became a frequent visitor to the renovated farm. Initially, his visits were official, documenting her testimony, ensuring her safety. Later, they became more personal. You have created something remarkable here, he said one autumn evening as they walked through the now thriving orchard, Samuel and Rusty running ahead of them. From desolation to abundance. Nora smiled, no longer the desperate widow in threadbare clothes, but a confident woman in a simple but well-made dress that complemented her natural beauty. I had help. From an eccentric old man who kept his secrets well, from a loyal dog, from a brave little boy. She paused, looking up at him. And from a certain envoy who ensured justice was done. Charles took her hand gently. The king has offered me a permanent position in his court. I have accepted, but find London would be a lonely place without certain companions. Is that a proposal, Master Grantham? Nora asked, her blue eyes sparkling with newfound confidence. It is indeed, Mistress Jenkins. For you and for Samuel, if you would do me the honor. As the sun set behind the renovated barn, now filled with healthy livestock rather than dangerous secrets, Nora Jenkins looked at the home she had built from worthless ruins. Sometimes the greatest treasures were hidden in the most unlikely places, whether gold in a derelict barn or love in the aftermath of tragedy. Yes, she said simply, as Samuel and Rusty circled back toward them, completing the picture of the family they would become. We would be honored. And so the peasant woman whose derelict inheritance had seemed worthless became the lady whose courage and resilience had restored justice to a kingdom, security to her son, and love to her heart, all because she had discovered what was hidden in the barn.